They each got a different spin on it, but this is the easiest one to drop bombs, which is the easiest thing to do in the jug. Dogfighting is a little bit of a, well, it's a learned thing.
Yeah.
It's not very straightforward in the jug like a turn fighter or a Mustang. You gotta, I don't know its fight, and I don't really know it yet. So Marky will probably teach you better dogfight, but I can get you off the ground.
Okay.
So I just jumped in a hot start. If you look, let's go from. If we go over your dashboard real quick. Actually, let's go over the whole plane. Start on our far left. If you looked all the way back to the far left, you're going to see a yellow flaps handle.
Okay, just give me a minute. It's rendering still.
Oh yeah, no problem. Let me know. Just let me know.
It's done.
So let me know when you're in the cockpit and you got your head tracker or whatever working for you, and we'll move forward.
Yep,
I'm going to take off and orbit.
Okay, so if you go all the way to the left side of your cockpit, all the way over your left-hand shoulder, look down, you'll see a yellow lever. It says flaps on it. Okay, that's the easiest thing to find. It actually goes a little farther back than that. You see that canister-looking thing right behind it, with its cord coming out of it?
Yep.
If you roll the front of that thing, it's a light, and when you come out in a dark start, if you don't want like cockpit lights that just blind you, you can roll that up, and it's an incandescent kind of a black light. It shows your gauges and stuff real well because they're going to be glowing green. It's a pretty neat look. But anyway, right up below that is going to be your arming for your bombs. So if you right click them, each one of them, they will arm. If you left click them back down, they're not armed. Okay.
Okay, they're armed.
Well, go ahead and disarm them now. So you just see how it works up and down. Leave them disarmed.
Yep.
Okay, so there's a big round wheel with a thing sticking out of it right in front of that.
Yep.
See that? That is going to be your elevator trim. I would suggest binding your trims to a hat if you can. Either way, that's up to you. So that
In the 47, you're going to need trim. You're going to have to trim it a lot.
a lot. But the thing about the trim on the 47,
A lot.
the thing about we've learned the trim of the 47 is that it's the button pushes on a HOTAS are going to be like 3 times what a normal button push for trim on other planes would be, so it trims really fast. So if you're going to put it on a HOTAS, be mindful of that and just tap it. I mean, just a quick little tap. You don't have to hold it or anything. If you don't want to deal with that, you can put it on a key binding on your keyboard, and that's going to get about 2 to 1. But either way, you got to be kind of gentle when you're doing the trim. You can get it really wonky really quick. So there's that wheel. If you look under that, all the way to the bottom, might have to lean over. There's this lever. It's got a knob on top of it. That's air filter control. And right there, and then right in front of that, if you look all the way down, see if I can lean forward. There's another lever that's sticking down. It's the emergency hydraulic hand pump. Tell me when you located both of those.
I haven't used that hydraulic hand pump in a really long time.
No, I haven't either, but it's good to know where it's at. I don't think I've ever used it. So anyway, I've never used an air filter, so if you ever come to where you need it, you know where it's at.
I don't think it's modeled. I don't think that works.
Okay, and you will come across the time, maybe sometime, where you have to use a hydraulic hand pump. That's to pump up your pressure so your landing gear will go down. So that's covered. Or above that big round wheel with the thing sticking out of it is going to be your rudder trim. If you'll see right in front of it, it's going to say N, TO, and then R for rudder. TO is takeoff trim, and it's set there with a little red thing. That's what you want it on takeoff. If you look above that, it's going to say your elevator, TH, and NH with an N in the middle. Neutral is N, NH is nose heavy, TH is tail heavy. If you look to the very forward, you're going to see aileron trim. That's going to take up that last little knob we're looking at. You're really not going to really need your ailerons that much. I mean, there's going to be a time where you get to, when you put the really nice tune on this plane and trim it out really nice, where you're going to want to mess with them. It's better to leave that alone for now, just because you can get them wonky, and you just don't have to have them at this point. So above that, we're not going to mess with tanks or anything, but if you were, there's going to be your auxiliary tanks, your external, and your auxiliary. I don't think auxiliary is modeled very well in here, so it's usually main or external. The other knob down there with looks the same way is going to be your left, right, and center tank. That's really not modeled very well either. I do it just out of superstition that it's one side of my plane is getting heavier than the other. I can't prove that in any way, so I'm not going to say you need to. That's going to be up to the left. You're going to see this red handle. It's going to be your landing gear lever. So if you don't want to bind it or whatever, you just reach over there and click it up, click it down. That's your landing gear. That's going to bring us all the way back up to the top, right under the canopy. You're going to see oil cooler and intercooler. You're going to want those definitely bound to maybe a 3-way switch if you have one. If not, a couple keybinds on your keyboard will do it. What those do is it keeps your plane from overheating. If you don't really mess with them much, if you want to, what I do is I leave my oil cooler and my intercooler at neutral all the time, and you move them. So they're open right now, or if you leave them open all the time, you're probably never going to have a problem with overheating. But there's some cases where you might want to get warmer quicker than normal. So there's instances where you want to close them. But for the most part, run them at neutral or open. You're not going to have too much trouble. That's going to take us to the switches right there. Those will control the oil cooler and the intercooler. If you don't want to bind them, you can just reach over and switch them switches. The funny thing is the top one operates the bottom one, and the bottom one operates the top one. Go figure. So if you click on them, you'll see what I mean. In front of that is going to be canopy close switch. You can open and close with that switch, but most importantly, right directly under those two, you're going to see a red cover on a switch. That's going to be how you arm and your machine guns. First, you have to flip the red cover off. Then you have 3 positions: off, which is off, camera only, which is going to run camera feed, or guns and camera. Down, you're going to want it to the down position. So arm your guns. And once that's in the down,
Words when you're binding stuff will be guns and camera to turn on your guns.
good note. He's right. Let's see. Where was I? Oh yeah. So all the way down is going to arm them. When that happens, you look up at your reticle. You're still not going to see crosshairs. Since we're doing that, if you go down back there to where that auxiliary fuel was, if you look right in front of that, you're going to see fuel booster pump rheostat and gun sight rheostat. Don't really ever mess with fuel booster pump rheostat unless you start to lose fuel pressure. We'll get to fuel pressure later, but what we're going to mess with all the time is that gun rheostat right there, the one above it. Roll it forward, and you are clicked in the guns and camera position. You should look forward, and now you should see your crosshairs on your gun sights. Okay, so getting farther, now comes the fun part, the throttle. So the big white one, that's going to be your main throttle. That's going to boost your manifold pressure. Okay, the one to the outside of it, the very far one to the left, that's going to be your, I'm sorry, I'm breaking up. The one to the far left is going to be your booster. That's going to be your supercharger for when you need it. When you get above 6,000 feet, you're going to need to start kicking your supercharger, but that's just engine management. The one on the other side of it is going to be your pitch. That's the one that's going to be very important all the time. You're going to want to make sure you have your throttle and your pitch bound to a slider if you can get away with it. And throttle is going to manipulate your manifold pressure, and pitch, RPM pitch, that's going to manipulate your RPM. The fuel mixture, the one with the big M on it, the red one, you don't really ever need to mess with that until you start getting into just really voodoo engine management, and I'm not there, so I couldn't teach you about it. Above that, forward, we're going forward from left to right. Down below that, you're going to see increased friction, big wheel. I don't ever mess with that. I think that's just there for looks. I'm not sure what that does, but it's supposed to increase the friction of makes your levers harder to push back and forward in real life. Okay, down back there by your rheostats, right under there. If we go back to your rheostats, go all the way to the bottom. You're going to see 3 switches. Generator always needs to be up. That's going to be your generator, alternator generator. The next one is going to be pitot heat.
Pilot heat.
Pitot tube or pitot tube, however you say it. You get above 30, you get above 20,000, you're going to want to. I've heard it said both ways. So, so you get above 20,000, you're going to flip that sucker on. That's going to run hot water past it and keep it from freezing up. The next one, oil dilution. If you start the cold start plane, you're going to be sitting there forever trying to get your temperatures right unless you dilute your oil to a certain extent. So that's going to mix fuel with your oil and make it more viscous. A very cold plane, the oil doesn't want to travel around, get all the nooks and crannies like it should. So that's what that's for. On a cold start plane, you're going to want to throw that down. Just make sure to turn it back off. I mean, turn it up to turn it on, but turn it back down to turn it off. Make sure you turn it off before you take flight. You'll forget about it, and then you'll just water down your oil and seize up your engine. Okay.
Yeah, like I'd say what 85% of learning how to fly the Jug is learning how to manage heat.
Yeah, it's true, and a lot, mainly it does itself. I mean, it's kind of ironic because if you don't mess with it, you don't really have to think about it. But it's going to come a time where you're going to have to. But
Yep.
for the most part, you don't. So for those 3 switches, we're going to have landing gear fuel lamp test switch and a oxygen turbine overspeed lamp test switch. Those will do exactly what they say. They're completely useless otherwise. They'll turn a little light on and off to make sure that light works. Other than that, you don't need to know what they do because they don't do much. Above that, wing position lights, tail position lights, landing light switch, that third one or second one from the front. That one's going to be important here in a minute. And then the first one is cockpit lighting. On a cold start, on a morning start like in Normandy we have, it's going to start you out in the dark. Default position in the dark. Those switches are going to be turned on. You're going to want to know how to turn those off once you get airborne so the enemy doesn't see you from across the map. The third one that looks like it's in the down position is down because it is retracted. So this is going to be a light that comes up under your left wing for landing. When you're in the dark, it's going to be like your headlight. See where you're going. It's got 3 positions. It's on, off, and retract. You're going to make sure it's retracted before you take off, or it's going to cause a lot of drag and buffet your plane and make your stick shake, and that's the way you'll notice it. But the 3 positions are retract there, and then one more, which is going to, let me look, F2 view, second position. Oops, second position turns it on, and the third position lowers it and it is turned on. So that's that one. Back into the cockpit. Right in front of that is going to be your breakers. These are all your breakers. If you want to go over each and every one of them, feel free. Sometimes your guns won't work. The category is guns at the top. You'll mess with those. I really have never had to mess with the ones in the middle, but the ones up front, that first row, that very top one pops out a lot when you have your cockpit lights on and your incandescents and your rheostat. That top breaker will pop out. It'll also kill your temperature gauge on your, you'll kill that too, or your pressure gauge, one of them. So you see that top one popped out. It's going to turn on 3 things. Now moving forward, we'll see a red cover switch. That is going to be, in fact, how you arm and disarm your bombs. Throw that cover up, turn that switch to up. That's going to make your bombs drop. Without that, your bombs and rockets won't drop. The next 2 to the right, you're never going to have to mess with those because we don't have chemical tanks in here. But those next 3 are going to be for when if you want to release all 3 bombs at the same time, you throw them all up. If you want to do one at a time, I suggest dropping the belly first and then the 2 wings next. If you'll look, it's not wing, belly, wing. It's wing, wing, and then belly on the outside. Go figure. Just keep that in mind when you're throwing those switches. If you're going to do them one at a time, always drop all 3 at the same time, because if you've already made it in past all the gunfire, you want to hit them back. You don't have to come back and But and copy. So the one right to the very right is going to be your bomb and rockets. So up is for bombs, down is for rockets. Moving towards to the right some more, right under the parking brake. That's self-explanatory. You'll pull it and hold your toe brakes in to set it. You're going to see the 3 red things. Those are, you can pull those and release your bomb no matter what the switches are set to. Those are mechanical release. It's going to, you yank that cord, it's going to be about a half second to 3/4 of a second delay, not a full second, and that tension will get tight on that aircraft cable and pull against your points, and the bombs will fall. It's not the best way to drop bombs because, like I said, there's that almost split second to almost a second delay, and that can be hit or miss when you start to bomb. Under that, while we're still on bombs and rockets, you're going to see a switch behind your stick. You might have to push the stick to the left or the right. It's going to say rocket release mode. For the rockets to shoot, you're going to need to click that thing one time, right click it to the right where it's on single, or you can click it to auto, or you can click it, but I only click it to single because I have less problems with that. Every time I push my pickle button, I release 2 rockets, 1 from each side. Even though it says single, it's 2, 1 off each wing, single. So now you know how to do your bombs and your rockets. I went over that just because we were on that category. Down below that, I don't ever mess with anything down there except for the bottom of the stick. If you hold your mouse to the bottom of the stick, you can click it and make your stick disappear or come back. So to get it out of your way. Down, as long as we're down at the bottom, I don't really ever mess with hydraulic pressure. I believe that's your hydraulic pressure right there. I'm not totally sure of that. That next thing to it is going to be your blinker oxygen flow indicator. Once you get up above where you need oxygen, that thing's supposed to kick in on itself, and it'll look like, you see, it kind of looks like an open mouth with teeth. It'll look like those teeth are opening and closing, or it's, yeah, that's how you know it's on. Next to that is going to be how much oxygen you have left in the cylinder. Right now, mine says between 400 and 500. When that thing gets down to nothing, you run out of oxygen, you're going to have to come down or black out. And if you notice yourself start to get tunnel vision and go, wow, did I get shot? And things start looking kind of like you had too many drinks, make sure that's turned on, or come down in altitude so you can breathe again, or you will pass out.
There's a bridge right off the end of this runway to Barnstorm, by the way, Bishop.
I can't wait. So let's go to the gauges. So over here, if we go all the way to the left again, you're going to see that compressibility flaps. I never mess with that. I got it bound to. I've got it bound to a thing on my HOTAS. It's supposed to help you pull out of a dive. It's not really modeled well in this game. I mean, I'm not saying it hurts you, but it doesn't. I haven't noticed it being so helpful. But if you want to get into dive bombing, you might want to venture into that. The next 2 switches, or the next switch and light, I've never messed with. It's to set your prop to automatic or adjustable, and I'm not really up on that, but there's a whole video from Greg's Airplanes or Automobiles that talks about it if you're interested. Next, these are things the big thing is your magneto. That has to do with starting the plane, the battery, starting the plane. Above that's your battery gauge. We're going to come to the clock at the very top. Down under that is going to be your miles per hour, indicated airspeed, miles per hour that is. Below that is going to be altitude. Let's go back up to the top real quick. That's going to be your compass. You can adjust it by the wheel at the bottom to make sure it lines up with your compass in the middle. The one in the middle is an actual floating magnetic compass. The one up here is set to, what is it, Mark? A gyroscope or some kind of, anyway, you want to make sure those two match. Below that is going to be your slip gauge. Your slip gauge is going to become real important in trimming out your plane. I don't know if you've flown the Warbirds before, but the slip gauge, if the ball is in the middle, that's optimum. If the ball is to the left, you want to rudder towards the ball. Yeah, chase the ball. So if the ball's to the left, rudder to the left. The ball's to the right, rudder to the right. But just like I say, trim is really touchy, so just taps. The bar sticking up and down, that's going to have to do with your ailerons, which is not going to get that wonky out of kilter unless you start messing with your ailerons. So I suggest not yet. Under that is going to be your acceleration. I don't know how to read that, but if you're in the know and you're a pilot or that probably helpful to you. To me, it doesn't. I really don't use it at all because I don't know how to use it. So climb rate is next. That's going to show you if you see that climb rate go up above 4 or 6, you're really climbing pretty hard. You want to keep it between 1 and 2 in the jug, unless you're really just trying to pull straight up and stall out. Below that, I never mess with it. It's the what does that say? Suction. So that's going to have to do with different systems of the airplane. If there's really no way to adjust your suction that I know of, so I don't mess with that one. Water pressure, same thing. Those two are kind of off my radar. Right above that, right to the right of climb rate, that's going to be your true compass. Going back to the top, that's going to be your artificial horizons, what I've always called them. That knob under it is going to adjust it up and down. The big knob is going to cage, uncage. You're going to want it caged usually while you're taxiing and maybe bounce down the runway and then uncage it once you're airborne. Or you can uncage it on the ground if you got a nice runway and you want to set it up on the ground, however you want to do it. Now, here's the important ones. All this talk to the really, really, really important gauges. The one right below the artificial horizon is going to be your manifold pressure. That's going to be your prop. Is going to your throttle is your throttle is going to command how much manifold pressure you have. If you look at it closely, you're going to see a big green section on it. That's going to be in the green. That's constant continuous. You can be able to run that all day long and it shouldn't cause any problems. You see it goes up to about 40, 2.5, 43. Then you're going to see a red line just after 50. That is if you are under you're at a certain altitude and you haven't started kicking your supercharger yet, or if you haven't had to use your war emergency power yet. That's with everything pushed up. You shouldn't. If you're above that, you're going to probably have about 5 minutes. You're going to cook your engine. The next red line you're going to see is after 60. It's just about 64, 63 and a half. That is for when everything's all engaged. You have your war emergency power, you have your supercharger, your turbocharger, your throttle, everything 100%. That's the red line you got to worry about then. For the most part, keep it right there in the green unless you're in a dogfight, and then give her all she's got, for whatever you can when you need it. Down below that, it's going to be your fuel and auxiliary tanks and main tank. I mean, auxiliary tanks aren't really modeled in here, so the one you're going to worry about is to the left. To the right. It's the fuel gauge. The important one now is the RPM, right to the right of the manifold pressure. That's going to be your pitch lever. Is going to control that. If you notice, 25's got a little bit of a green on it. I think from like 23 or 20 something to 25 and a half, 26. That's where you're going to want to just keep your RPMs right in there for now. Just almost all the way up on your pitch lever, and then pull back just a hair is going to keep it there. For your throttle, keeping that 40, that green area on the throttle all the way forward, and then pull it back a good, I don't know, a good 8 maybe on the travel, and it keeps it right there without having to look at your gauge. But you'll figure out what it does to your throttle. Turbo RPMs, that's going to tell you when you have your turbocharger. I said supercharger. It's a two-stage turbocharger, in fact, not a supercharger. Supercharger came later for the Corsair, I believe. Above that is going to be cabin air, carb air temperature. I don't look at that. I have no way of knowing what I'm doing with it. I've never had trouble with carburetor temperature. Below turbo RPM, this is the important ones. This is the heat you're going to keep an eye on all the time. It's going to be oil pressure and fuel pressure. Don't let somebody tell you that's how much this pound. No, that's your pressure. 2 on the bottom. The one on top is your temperature. If you keep them all in the blue or just on the red on each side of it, you're going to be fine. You can go either side of that red line for 5 or 6, maybe a minute or two. Some cases of 5 or 6 minutes before it's going to seize up. But that's not where you want to be for very long. You're going to control that by your intercooler and your oil cooler, mainly your intercooler. Let me look and make sure I'm not telling the wrong thing. I'm sorry. So your oil cooler is going to control your that temperature. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
I think I'm going to have to do some practicing on this.
I'm telling you, I'm just getting you familiar with the cockpit. We're not going to mess with all this. It's just
Yeah, there's not an exam afterwards or anything.
really you're not going to study that big pinball looking thing right next to it. You push it in. It's going to close your cloud flaps. Pull it out. It's going to open them. Over there, that thing says engine primer. That's for starting your engine. We're not going to mess with that. We're going to hit auto start. Down here at the bottom, these lights over here, this will change the color of your lights. Don't got to mess with that. Oxygen thing over there. Your radio, you might have to mess with your radio in this server. I'm not sure. I think we might be able to listen to BBC if we go back with one of those red buttons. The rest of that on the right side of the plane is garbage except for the tail wheel lock, which is the yellow knob down to the right of your plane down the bottom. That's the only thing important on this whole side of the plane, really, other than the oxygen, but you're not going to mess with that much. So,
Yeah. How about I climb into a P-51 Mustang and do a little flying?
yeah, if you're if I've overstimulated your your
Well, I need practice with this.
okay, I probably shouldn't have done the whole cockpit layout for you, but I did. So now, next time you're ready to actually fly it, we don't have to mess with all that. In fact, if you want to fly it right now, it's not that hard. Take it off. Really, just use your throttle like you would in P-51. It's just difference. The only main difference is it doesn't take off as quick. You got to kind of be a little bit more gentle on takeoff. Use a little bit more toe brake or rudder, and you should be able to take off no problem. But if you're ready to fly the Mustang for now, go ahead. We'll come back to this some other time.
Yeah, I'm more comfortable in the Mustang.
Copy that. I scared him away, Marky. I gotta mark that one down.
Yeah.
That was a
I
miss.
just
That was
I
a
don't
miss.
have it set up for the P-47 yet, so
I got you.
I need to set those up, and I need to do a little practice in there.
I totally understand. What hot are you using?
Sorry?
What stick are you using? Flat stick?
I got a Wing Orion too.
Oh well, you're in luck. I can set you up in about 2 minutes with it. I've got the same thing. We can set that sucker up the jug in no time. But when you're ready, holler at me. This has been a lot of talking, not a lot of flying. So get in the plane, get in there, have fun. I'm gonna step away for a minute.
Okay.
What in the hell is going on with that guy?
Shit, I'm downloading the channel, dude.
I thought you had it.
I don't have it downloaded.
Oh, I gotcha.